Hey everybody, and welcome to another edition of Craft Brewed Sports Cincinnati Style. This is the show where we take you deep inside Cincinnati sports, Bengals, Reds, UC, Xavier, whatever. I am Mike. With me as always is Scott. Joe is behind the computer there. Scott, are you ready to tap this keg of Cincinnati sports knowledge?
I like it as much as I like the chili. Which I enjoy the chili, so I'm here for it. Let's do this.
Good. Joe, how you feeling this week, man?
What it do, baby?
I love when Joe busts out the what it do, baby. It's
good
my
stuff.
favorite. It's my favorite. This is Craft Brewed Sports Cincinnati Style, and as always, Craft Brewed Sports Cincinnati Style is brought to you by Minuteman Tickets. Everybody, football is back, and there's only one spot you should be heading to get your college football or NFL tickets, and that's Minuteman Tickets. We love them. They're Ohio guys. They're sports fans, and they're not going to screw you over like other ticketing places. And not just football, they got it all. Baseball, hockey, theater, rib cook-offs. It doesn't matter. Hit them up, MinutemanTickets.com, or give them a call, 614-943-3000, and avoid all of the fees. That's 614-943-3000. Tell them you heard about them right here on Craft Brewed Sports Cincinnati Style. Scott. This weekend.
Yeah, it didn't cost you. I'm the one who was wrong about the spread, so, you know.
In the regular show, Scott did pick the Bills to cover, and they did not cover. So I guess that's one thing that we can hang our hat on. The Bengals
Bengals covered the spread.
Against the spread, we got the W, baby. We're going to get into that Bengals-Bills game. We're also going to preview this Bengals-Pittsburgh game coming up here on Monday Night Football. Boy, the NFL's got to be really disappointed that that's their Monday night game this week.
Well, and I talked about it with a couple of different people. How often this early in the year especially does the NFL find themselves with 2 0-for teams on a Monday Night Football matchup? You know, not like an 0-1 too, but 2 teams 0-3 on a Monday Night Football game. Like,
it can't have happened.
Right, I'd be curious to see how often that's happened.
Yeah, definitely not very often. We're also going to talk some Reds baseball, and Marty hanging up the microphone for the last time. An end of an era, if you will. That's really the only thing to talk about with Reds baseball because, good Lord, that's been awful too lately. And then we're going to talk UC football. There's at least some bright spot because they got Marshall coming up this week.
There's hope.
UCF coming in next week after falling to Pitt. So there are all kinds to unpack in the American this week. Let's get right into this Bengals game and talk the disappointment that happened in Buffalo this week. So the first half was one of the most pitiful excuses for football I have ever seen in my life. The Bengals offense was complete garbage. Frank Gore, who is 112 years old, ran all over that team. They couldn't stop anything on defense. I feel like Buffalo was able to just move.
You're wrong.
Oh, okay.
That first half is. That first
You're
half
wrong.
isn't
I like
as
how
bad.
he just shuts me down, right?
No,
You're
because
wrong.
that first half wasn't as bad as everybody thought it was. Everybody wanted to say, well, you know, the offense looked bad, and that meant that the team didn't show up. But I actually saw a team that, you know, they only gave up 14 points in that first half.
But how much of that was Buffalo shooting themselves in the foot? With dumb turnovers, like penalties that stalled out a drive. Like, I feel like.
But I mean, that's still it is what it is. I mean, at the end of the first half, all you can do is look at the scoreboard and say, "Are we still in this game?" It's 14 points. The Bills had to, you know, get a 2-point conversion, and they kicked 2 field goals. I mean, most teams will take that. If you said at halftime of any given NFL game you're going to be down 14, but, you know, the opposing team, you know, got a 2-point conversion and kicked 2 field goals, pretty much every team in the NFL would take that. I didn't think they looked bad on, you know, defense and as a team on a whole. It's just the offense was completely non-existent. And it goes to this running game. This running game has got to get going.
What running game? That's it.
That's what I'm saying. Like, this running game, like Joe Mixon, the offensive line, I don't know what it is, but it has got to like materialize and show up, or you're going to see a lot of this because Andy Dalton cannot sit back and pass, them to victory at any point. Like, I mean, he's not that type of quarterback. They don't have that type of personnel just in offense in general with A.J. Green out. And so if you're asking them to throw their way to victory week in and week out, you're going to be disappointed. I mean, all things considered, a 14-point deficit at halftime, it should have been a lot worse. They were in a decent position, but, you know, Mixon for him last week to say, hey, you know, come try out, and then, you know, be another no-show. And at this point, I'm watching the game.
In fairness, they did have more rushing yards this week than the previous 2 weeks. So
but I'm watching and thinking, okay, this isn't all on the offensive line. Like, he's not the same Joe Mixon. Like, it hasn't clicked for him yet. I don't know what it is, but, you know, if that never gets going, then this is what you're going to see.
I think it's crazy, though, that you have an offense that's so inept in the first half, and then you flip over to the second half, and it was like a totally different team was on the field.
Well, and again, the third quarter, it wasn't. It was almost like something clicked at that beginning of the fourth quarter where they're just like, all right, well, all these things are going to work. And I felt like they lulled the Bills to sleep a little bit. I think
they had that long touchdown drive in the third quarter where Dalton was able to run it in.
But that was at like the very end of the third quarter. Like, we're talking the waning minutes.
Fair enough. That's
so
fine.
For most of the third quarter, again, they were MIA. Like, it was like they came out of
that's the
halftime
plan.
And thinking,
we're just gonna go ahead and lay it down and get them. Joe pointing out that it wasn't a long drive at all that scored with Dalton. I that was a little bit of hyperbole. I'm sorry, Joe. It was a 22-yard drive.
Well, there you go. I was gonna say I don't remember it being a long drive, but okay, it felt like it because no drives had gone.
It felt like exactly because that was the first time
we had gotten in field goal range.
First down, hell yeah, baby! Bam, 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 bam. But yeah, the team just I don't know. You're right. There's no rushing game whatsoever from this team.
And you're just not going to win. I know this has become a passing league, but you've got to have some sort of running game to detract. Because if teams can just sit back and say, well, this team can't run the ball, we'll just, you know, have 8 defenders, you know, in the backfield or whatever, or not in the backfield, but, you know, in the secondary, and we'll just wait for these guys to try to pass it against us. You know, they're one-dimensional. You can't win games like that if there's no threat on the ground. And
you can if you have Mahomes as your quarterback. That's pretty much the only thing. Yeah. If you've got Mahomes as your quarterback, it's like, go for it. You do. Go ahead and draw one up in the sand
if you've got
huddle.
One of the most unique players in NFL history running your offense,
then that's what we need.
Then yes, you're free and clear.
Andy Dalton ain't that guy.
I honestly thought, though, that when the Bengals started to click, because the Bills had, you know, gone to sleep, and I don't know if they felt like they had this one or they just weren't concerned that the Bengals could sustain anything. Like, even after they gave it the first touchdown, I was like, all right, well, they got in the end zone, but we've got this. We've held them to just the one touchdown throw this time. That once the Bengals did start clicking and the Bills were scrambling to get back in order and get back on the board, I thought the Bengals had them right where they want them and were going to be able to close things out.
After that Buffalo touchdown, there was like a minute and 50-some to go in the game. The Bengals got the ball back, and I actually felt confident that they were – I was like, this team has been moving the ball. They can actually put this together. And honestly, that is what I look to as the bright spot of this game. The clock management in that 2-minute drill to end the game was fantastic. Like, they were just sitting back, taking what the defense gave them. They were hitting the slants over the middle. Dalton was making the right reads. You had a couple plays where, like, Erickson was able to get out of bounds and stop the clock. They preserved that. They had one timeout and had to go the whole distance. It was like, man, they are going to do this. This is actually going to happen. And then Dalton throws one over, and it's tipped, and that's the end of it.
Yeah, I mean, it ends unfortunate, I guess is the best way to put it. The outcome, you're not looking for wins. But again, it's out of the 3 games so far that they've played, this is now the second one. It was winnable. And there's things that you look at and say, all right, this went well. Yeah, okay, the first half on offense and goal. But again, I still maintain that the defense played well enough throughout the entire game. But definitely in the first half, if it wasn't for the defense, this one could have gotten out of hand like the San Francisco game.
I think Sam Hubbard had a hell of a game. That dude.
He's had a hell of a season so far.
Out.
I mean, every game, if you look at the stat sheet, Sam Hubbard is right there at the top of it where it's like, he has definitely come into his own. He's playing well. He's the the lone consistent
5 solo tackles, 7
consistent
tackles,
bright
5
spot.
solo. That's great, and he's the defensive lineman that was able
Right.
to do that. The next 2 highest were secondary guys.
No, I mean it's there's spots, and I mean again, when you're looking at the regime change and them having to get Taylor's own guys in there and weeding guys out that are still hanging on from the last regime. There's going to be this where it's kind of this in between, but you're just looking for moments and drives and plays, and you hope that they can put it all together and string along, something that will lead to victories. But this to me is what again, you want W's, but it feels good after the game because you're like, all right, they could have come out, been embarrassed again because they got embarrassed against San Francisco. They're going on the road. Buffalo, this is their home opener. We know how their fan base is. It's rowdy, it's loud, it's all the things, and they didn't get rolled up. So I know that you don't want moral victories, but again, it's just like there's things that you have to point to and say, well, this is still like things are trending in the right direction.
Are they though?
Yes.
Let me just back up real quick. The most disappointing part of this game, there was no crazy stories about Bills Mafia that came out. Like, I wanted to hear
but that
something
we know
crazy,
of.
but there was nothing. Like, normally there's some crazy story that comes out, and if Bills Mafia does something, like, what they're going to do next week when the Bills play the Patriots.
No,
They're going to bring back their old reliable when the
Somebody
Patriots
threw a
come to
table?
town. Well, yeah, that and things on the field. Things are getting tossed on the field. Because the Pats are coming into
The
town.
sex toys are coming out in Buffalo. I didn't even think about that. That's a good point.
But there's nothing that came out. I was like, oh man, the Bills home opener. This
Maybe
is
they're
gonna
just
be.
saving it for.
Maybe that's it. They were looking past the Bills Mafia was looking past the Bengals.
The Bills Mafia was. But no, I mean, I feel like this team. There's going to be a lot of this where they come up short, but you feel good about them. We aren't done this season where I think they've got at least 2 more ugly games in them where if you're going to be like, oh, wow, they didn't show up on either side of the ball and they just got blown out and handled, because that's just where they're at in their redevelopment and their rebuilding. But the more games that they have like this, the better you should feel going into next season and through this whole regime change. Like at the end of the year, you're going to look back on it and look at the whole season and say, all right, did Zach Taylor, was he able to improve this team throughout? Did they make strides? Where do they look? Like it, after 3 games, you're not saying, well, this is a total wash or this is great. You're just looking for signs in the right direction, and I think they've given that to the fan base through 3 games.
Does it weird you out that Zach Taylor doesn't wear a hat or a visor on the sidelines?
No.
It super weirds me out, man. Like I can't get past it. And the whole time I'm watching that game on
Neither
Sunday,
did his boy McVay. I mean,
but that's
McVay
yeah.
doesn't wear anything either.
But at least McVay has like the finely coiffed hair. Zach Taylor just has like the mop on the top. I'm like, dude, cover that up. And maybe it's just jealousy because he's got a ton of hair and I got nothing left. But I get so mad. I'm like, put something on your head, man, or style your hair. Do something. You look weird, bro.
You got no time. No time. All business, baby.
That was the weirdest. I know McVay. Are there any other coaches that aren't wearing visors or hats?
Bill
Bill will wear a visor every once in a while, right?
Bill Belichick? No.
Yeah, he'll wear a visor.
No.
He'll
put his
the
hood up.
He does
Yeah.
put the hood up. That counts.
On
I'm
rainy
counting
days.
that.
Shanahan doesn't wear anything either.
Oh, Shanahan doesn't?
No.
Is that a young guy thing? Are young coaches just getting rid of the visors and hats?
Millennials and
God,
no hats
ruining
and visors.
everything. Ruining everything. There's actually a lot that was made of Zach Taylor in this Bills game because that last play on the
He lost his
interception
mind.
loses his stuff, going crazy, calling for a safety on that one, and everybody's like, dude, you got to know the rules. What a rookie mistake. Come on, what are you doing? I'm all about that. Shoot your shot, baby. Like, what's the worst that could happen is it doesn't.
I was going to say, they tell you that you're not right about the rule.
Right, yeah, that's like the worst thing that could happen. At best, maybe they go back and look at it, and they're
And
like,
they look,
actually.
I was going to say, they blow calls every down in the NFL. So the chance that you just lose your mind and it influences them one way or the other is pretty high. So
Right.
might as well.
Go for it, man. But that's where I feel like he's missing out on not having a hat, because it really emphasizes the point to throw the hat down and get really fired up. You gotta toss that hat on the field and really stick your. He didn't give himself up, and then you throw the hat, and then they're like, "All right, we'll look at it again."
We were going to call a safety, but he didn't throw down his hat, so we felt confident in our call. The play stood.
I think that was the discussion with New York.
Well, now the other weird thing about this, this season so far is you've got 2 road games. They're competitive and could have won both road games.
Can't do anything at home.
Got blown at home. And, okay, it's a small sample size, one game at home. But I think that this team, because of the way that the home fans reacted in that San Francisco game, I think that we're going to see that this is going to be a theme this year, that the team is just going to play better on the road.
Just
because
road warriors.
there's less pressure. Because if they, in that first half, could you imagine if they had gone into this first half, that was the same way here? If it was 14-0 Bengals and or Bills in Cincinnati, people would have been booing. They would have been down on them. Guys would have been leaving. I think that this team, just because of the nature of the coaching change and the way everything is, we're just going to end up seeing this where they play better on the road. It'll be inexplicable because in the NFL it's traditional that you have home field advantage and all that, but they'll just play better on the road because there's less pressure and they don't feel that need to appeal to these fans off what they do from down to down, play to play, and worrying about the boos and getting down on themselves. So I just think that this is going to be a trend that we see, and that's why I kind of like them this week in Pittsburgh.
I think you might be onto something, that they are going to be road warriors. So looking ahead to this Pittsburgh game on Monday Night Football, 2 0-3 teams going at it, which Monday Night Football this year has been brutal.
Buzz's girlfriend.
Excuse you?
What a great reference. What a great obscure reference for you to pull out, man. So if you look at Monday Night Football over this season, you had Denver and Oakland, which then you had Cleveland at the Jets, which, whatever. The Browns played well, but it was also the third string quarterback for the Jets in that game.
But it's also a matchup that if you're thinking traditionally
Right.
over the last 10 to 15 years, you're thinking, those are two awful teams.
And now you got 0-3 Cincinnati heading to 0-3 Pittsburgh. It's like Monday Night Football is becoming the new Thursday Night Football, where it's just garbage football that's being played.
That can't even be flexed out of. It's all set in stone.
You got it. Here's the NFL. Take it or leave it.
And they've got to hype it up. I mean, no matter what, those promos come out for Monday Night Game, no matter what, and they're trying to get you excited about it. It's like, it's a real hard sell when you've got 2 0-3 teams.
It should just be like the boxing announcer is just like, somebody's always got to go, and that's it. That's the whole promo for this one.
They'd be better off leaning into it. It's like, it's 2 crap teams tonight. Somebody's got to win, or maybe they'll tie. Stick around to find out tonight on Monday Night Football.
Is that the worst case scenario for the NFL? Is the Bengals and Steelers tie on Monday Night Football?
I think that would be beautiful. I think that would be just poetry. Like, one of these 0-3 teams have got to change that tonight. Crap. They tied 6-6. Well, see you next week, sports fans.
Well, let's see what we can figure out in this game. So looking at how the Steelers have done this year, they got blown out by the Patriots in week 1. That was a game that everybody thought the Steelers were at least going to be competitive in, and they were not. They didn't even show up in that game. And then we've got 2 common opponents. And I know that's not the best way to kind of judge how a team's going to do, but it's the only thing we have.
Well,
right?
and I mean, you can kind of glean something from it, especially the more recent one. I also think that it's, you've got to factor in the Ben situation, and you got Mason Rudolph in there now, who now has 1 start under his belt, so that'll be different. But having watched the
I was going to say, so you saw them play the 49ers.
And 49ers did everything they could to try to lose that game. 5 turnovers, 4 in the first half. And, I mean, the defense played well, but just in general on offense, they were awful. And then, they made enough plays to win the game. Mason Rudolph looked like what you would expect, though. A guy starting his first
Yeah.
NFL game. Deer in headlights. I mean, he had moments where you could see maybe things were clicking, but overall, for having 5 turnovers, you think there's no way a team's going to lose that game, but they still did.
Well, and that's what's crazy. So you take away those 5 turnovers, and the Niners likely blow out the Steelers. In that game.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you have a blowout loss for the Steelers against the Niners, a blowout loss for the Bengals against the Niners,
Mm-hmm.
and then the other common opponent is Seattle, and both teams played
pretty
Seattle pretty well. Like,
right.
and
One on the road, one at home.
Right. That's what I was going to say. The difference being the Steelers were at home for that game,
Right.
Whereas the Bengals made the trip across the country to put up that fight. So I feel like this is going to be one of those games that
I think this sets
toss it up.
I think this sets up perfectly for the Bengals because if they play better on the road, there's less expectations. They're not sitting here all day Monday, the city buzzing about it being Monday Night Football. They're in Pittsburgh. You're going up against Mason Rudolph. They've knocked on the door of these 2 road games, coming up just short of getting the victory. This is ripe for them to get to finally kick that door in and get their first victory. Because, I mean, the Steelers looked pretty good on defense. I'll give them that against the Niners. They did come to play on defense, but they're just not the same Steelers team. And no matter how you shake it out, it's Mason Rudolph at quarterback. I mean,
it is, but what scares me is Connor at running back because the Bengals have shown they can't stop the running game.
Look at the numbers, though. Look at Joe. Get the numbers up because I thought I was worried about James Conner being a factor in this game. Not only was he not a factor, I also looked it up after the game. He hasn't been a factor through before that either. So far this season, Connor hasn't gotten it going yet either. And
and that's fair. That's fine.
I think that part of the reason is, especially this past week, is all right, James Conner. Well, we'll just lock him down. Mason Rudolph beat us. And that's what the Bengals have to do. The Bengals have to say,
you're right.
Mason
they do
Rudolph,
have to. Yeah.
If the Steelers are going to win this game, then Mason Rudolph has to win. And I don't think that he's capable of doing that. I just don't think that you're asking the
Mason,
man in a second
Rudolph
ever
versus
NFL start to win a Monday Night Football game. I just don't see it happen.
Mason Rudolph versus the Bengals secondary. That's
but that's the thing though. The Steelers secondary, they made that trade for Minka Fitzpatrick because their secondary was awful. They were getting torched, and they didn't look that much better against the Niners. The Niners were able to move the ball up and down the field. Then they, shot themselves in the foot with a turnover. But the ease at which they were moving the ball, I mean, it's not. The Bengals can do something in this game. I think they can make enough plays to win. I would pick them to win by 2 field goals. I give them a 6-point advantage in this.
wow.
And they're getting
Even
4
though
points.
they're
in the
getting
spread.
4 points, right?
Yeah, I still think that they should win by 6.
If Zach Taylor brings home this W against the Steelers, is he cementing his place as the greatest Bengals coach in the last 50 years?
They wanted to build a statue for Marvin. They probably will build a statue for Zach Taylor on Tuesday.
We beat Pittsburgh
On Monday night.
on Monday. That's true. The
Yeah.
primetime curse is
Monday night, first win, statue up on Tuesday.
I think
It's
you might be
coming.
right. And you know what? In the statue, I would be happy to see him without a hat or visor. I'd be okay with it. If he gets the W against Pittsburgh, I'm okay with it. All right, so you've got the Bengals winning this one outright.
I do.
You're not even – because I know in the show, in our regular Wednesday night show, you actually picked the Bengals in our Degenerate Dartboard of Doom.
Right, for the spread.
yeah,
them
you had
getting
them plus 4
points, but I think regardless of that 4 points, they
Outright.
win this game. I got them, like I said, I got them winning by 2 field goals.
I just feel like maybe I'm just that jaded fan where I just can't pull the trigger and say
I think it'll be a low-scoring game. I think we're talking
6-0,
6-0, yeah.
9-3. Are we going to see a 9-3 Monday Night Football game?
No, but I think it's going to be like something like 9-17, something where you're just like, ooh, this is a throwback, but not in a good way.
You know what's going to suck? Here's what's going to suck about this. Even if the Bengals do get the win, I think you're right. I think it'll be like a sloppy, low-scoring.
Not even necessarily sloppy, just no offense.
Nobody can do anything.
Right,
Right,
yeah,
yeah. Nobody can do anything. Or people are
conservative.
turning the ball over, and it's,
Sure.
whatever. We're going to have to listen to, the national media just rag on. At least if you could say, well, at least we won it. Because that's all it's going to come down to is they're going to crap all over this game on Tuesday morning. So you better be the team that got the W on that one.
Sure.
Because if you're the one that lost that awful game, you're going to have a really crappy
The
week.
good thing, if you're the Bengals in that situation, everybody expects you to lose these
That's
games.
true.
So the Steelers are going to take exponentially more crap for losing this game than the Bengals would. Like, it'll be, if the Steelers win a sloppy game, it'll be, well, gee, they came out with a victory, but here's why it was awful. If the Bengals do, it'll be, wow, the Steelers are just really god-awful. Like, no matter what, the Bengals will be ignored for better or worse. So, just better off
better about this now. I feel much better
just
about
better
Tuesday
off
morning.
coming out with a victory.
Because Tuesday morning, I didn't want to listen to the radio at all on Tuesday. But now I feel better. Yeah,
One way or another, they're gonna be crapping on the Steelers.
We're
You'll be fine.
smelling like roses, baby.
Right.
Joe, what is your take on this? You're a Browns fan. You've kind of watched the Bengals the last couple of weeks. Where do you think the state of this program is currently?
They're in some trouble.
Looking at the division, they are in a little bit of trouble. Like, it started off where
Are they though?
yes, I think so.
But I'm saying in terms of Steelers are 0-3, they're on 3, Browns are 1-2, and the Ravens are 2-1. Like, they're not even that far out of it.
It's a good point. But it feels like they're farther away with
But
the Ravens.
Numbers wise though, yeah, like on paper, team wise, skill wise, yeah, they're definitely not close to the Browns or Ravens. Like, they're very far away. But when you look at the records, that's all that matters. I mean, they're not out of the division picture. I mean, if they were the only 0-3 team in the division, then it's like, well, yeah, they're buried.
Let's pull up the schedule and let's see what week we can officially count out the Bengals. Because looking ahead, so we've got the Steelers this week. We're saying that's a winnable game. Yeah. You got the Cardinals coming up after that.
That's a
winnable game too, right? So now you're sitting at 2-3 in the division, not looking too shabby because I think the Browns are going to still falter. The Steelers are going to be the Steelers, and then the Ravens are probably going to put it together.
The problem is then you hit the stretch of, oh God.
Yep. Then you're at Baltimore, at home against Jacksonville, at home against the Rams, and then at home against Baltimore again.
Yeah, that's a string of probably all losses.
So
right
I feel like you have to beat the Steelers, you have to beat the Cardinals, and then you're probably not seeing a win again until the middle of November when you travel to Oakland and play the Raiders. That's your next chance at a win, right?
I was gonna say that's the next winnable game.
And you could go 2 in a row there.
And the Bengals-Rams game is going to be in London.
Oh, it's a London game.
Yeah, well, that I feel like that game, no matter where the game is played, they're not winning that one or even have a chance. The Rams should win that one running away, regardless of where that's played. So I mean, but it really
so
just
much.
London games are the worst. But I mean, it really is just a block of games that you're like, you might as well just write them off for all of them.
Then you've got the Raiders at home. The Raiders away, the Steelers at home, and then the Jets at home. Those are three winnable games.
I was going to say, those are then 3 winnable games.
And then you've got the Browns, which who knows where the Browns are going to be at that point. The Patriots, forget about that one. But then you've got the Dolphins and then the Browns, so maybe you can finish off with 2 wins. If they finish off the season with 2 wins, I feel like those last 2 weeks, if you win those last 2 weeks, I think the city of Cincinnati will be ecstatic.
Well, and look at if we break
regardless
it down
of what
off
happens.
Well, but I'm saying if we break it down like that, so we're saying like 1, 2, maybe
5.
say 3. We'll say they split with the Steelers, so we're not going to give them both of them. 4 against the Jets,
split with the Browns,
split with the Browns, so that's 5. And then Miami, that's 6. If this team was 6-10 at the end of the year, how happy would you be? I mean, or better question is, how disappointed could you really be?
No, at that point,
based on everything.
If they finish out 6-10, I think everybody should be ecstatic.
Now, I personally picked them to finish with 4 wins on the season. So you're only talking about a 2-game swing. It's not out of the realm of possibility the way they've played that, 6 wins. If that's their ceiling, that's not a bad ceiling. And I would say that's about as successful season as you could hope. And we're assuming that all of those wins are anything could happen in those other games where it's like they win 1 or they lose 1. Like somehow they could still get to those 6 wins. It might not be the way we've predicted, but they could still find themselves at that range regardless. So I feel like you got to get 1 first. So
get that first one.
I was going to say win this one against the Steelers and then we'll go from there. But I just feel like this team overall at the end of the year, people are going to look back and say, this was a good enough year, headed in the right direction, feel good. Let's see what happens in the offseason and go from there.
I'm on board with that. I like it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about a team that's not heading in the right direction. One that is really struggling. That's my Red Legs. Been a while since we heard that call.
That's right, Marty.
And we may not.
Hear it again.
We might not. Okay, so Marty Brennaman. At the time that we are recording this, Marty will be calling his final game tomorrow, Thursday, against the Brewers. It's a day game. There's been a whole hullabaloo made of Marty retiring. It's a big deal. Everybody's sad, and there's people writing letters and audio clips thanking Marty for everything he's done. Maybe it doesn't hit me as hard because I didn't grow up here. And I understand Marty has been calling Reds games for 46 years. Damn near a third of the franchise's existence. He's been the radio guy. I just can't get into baseball on the radio. I can't do it.
Really?
Yes.
I listened to probably, it wouldn't be half, but of the Braves games, just because, my children these days take over the TV or whatever, I would say I listened to about a third of the games on the radio for one reason or the other. And I mean, it's baseball. Like, I don't. So the funniest part is I can't listen to any other sport on the radio, but baseball. That's something about it that's just.
But see, that's what kills me. So baseball, and I know everybody is tying this to the nostalgia aspect, and they grew up listening to Marty, and their dad listened to Marty, and their grandpa listened to Marty, and it's
right.
This thing when they were little, they used to listen to it with their dad and grandpa, and it was a big thing. But man, baseball needs to sever the ties with these nostalgic aspects of the game. That's what's holding baseball back as a sport. Like, I think the more that guys like Marty retire, the more the sport can then say, okay, now it's time to move forward with something else.
Oh, I don't think you're wrong on that. I'm just saying there's this certain sense of I don't know. It's hard to describe. Like, I mean, because I think I put Marty in the same class as Vin Scully. I mean,
Whoa,
it's just
really?
like a legendary voice of a team that, transcends like the game. I mean, it's just like people know Marty who don't care anything about the Reds. People know, I mean, I would listen to Vin Scully when the Braves would go to Atlanta or would go to LA because it's Vin Scully.
Right, but that's kind of crazy because I never really, I put Marty on this pedestal of you're an icon in Cincinnati.
Sure.
I put him on this pedestal of you're probably pretty well known in the among NL Central teams, but I never really put him on that pedestal of like Vin Scully level.
This season has confirmed to me. I thought it before. I granted, Vin Scully, is still above him in my perspective, but I definitely thought he's in that same, he's sitting at the same table. Like, Vin Scully is at the head of the table, but he's at the same table. And then this season, with everything that's happened and the way Major League Baseball has treated it and all the hullabaloo or whatever word you used to describe it, whatever weird word. I wanted to call you out about that before, but whatever.
Hubbubaloo?
Yeah.
Hullabaloo?
Baloo?
Hubbubaloo.
Hubbububba. Anyway, that he's definitely in that class. And so it's a big deal, Like, there are only a few of these guys in baseball history, and he's one of the last ones standing. So it's a big deal.
It's a big deal that it's coming to an end. I feel like, and I'm the type of guy.
But you aren't. Yeah, I mean, you aren't wrong in that baseball does need to get away from these type of guys.
Right. It's time to move on.
Because it definitely ties them to an era where baseball was king of the world that no longer exists.
Exactly. It's time to get a fresh perspective in where it's like, okay, Marty has been doing the same thing for 46 years. Granted, he does it very well.
Right.
And I love that he will call out the manager. He'll call out a player. He says flat out somebody made a stupid play on the base paths. Mm-hmm. Like, he doesn't mince words.
That's been my favorite part about Marty forever is his honesty.
My favorite is when you can pinpoint a moment where Marty catches himself from swearing over somebody doing something stupid. Like, you just picture your grandpa just being like, you friggin' burger. Like, those moments are amazing to me. But we are at the point now where it's like, okay, baseball is a dying sport. I feel like baseball on the radio is dying even more rapidly than baseball is dying in general. So let's get somebody else in there who can do something different, fresh perspective. I just think of like Brockmeyer and like when they bring in the new guy. Yeah, where it's like, okay, get rid of that. We're going to bring in the new guy.
He is the same mold.
He is Brockmeyer.
Yeah.
But he's finally hanging it up, so cheers, Marty. That's the other thing that upsets me, okay?
What's that?
People are posting on social media like these congratulations and thank yous to Marty Brennaman. He'll never see them. Yeah, he'll never see them. And I'm reading all these posts in like Reds groups and Fangers where they're like, Marty, you don't know what you've done for me growing up. And it's like, he still doesn't know because he ain't reading this post.
Yeah, he's not scrolling through message boards or on Twitter. You know, he's not atting anybody. Yeah, no, that's a very good point. All of these heartfelt tributes are going unseen.
On the plus side, though, for the Reds, they can't lose 90 games. If they lose the rest of their games, all 4, they only end up with 89 losses.
That's right. We've hit
that plateau. Good for them.
Hit that magic number.
We hit the magic number.
Won't lose 90, baby.
There's a game against Milwaukee tomorrow at the time that we record this. Likely Milwaukee wins that one, and then you have 3 in Pittsburgh. Here's the other thing about this.
Is the series to watch. Right. 2 teams who have nothing to play for, but will they throw down for the 3rd time this year?
Would it be good for baseball to just like when you get to it at like that series that it's just like, don't even play the games. It doesn't matter. These games are completely pointless. Don't even worry about them.
I want to tune in for this. Like the Braves are firmly in the playoffs, so they're just resting guys. It's like if there was any reason to watch baseball this weekend. What's going to happen in the Pirates?
There was impact.
Does no Puig make it so that they don't?
No, Amir Garrett's still on the team, so
sure.
But
I'm saying like how much? I was going to say how much of the bad blood is related to Puig and like. I don't know. I just in general, like, is there still enough blood here to get another spark going, or are they just gonna both limp into the offseason?
No, they're absolutely gonna limp into the offseason. It's just gonna be whatever. Sonny Gray had surgery today to repair some issues in his elbow that he's been dealing with all year long, which is amazing to me. That dude had like floating particles in his elbow and still managed to be an ace on a staff. It's absolutely crazy that he goes and does that. I feel like the rest of the pitching staff needs to just bash their elbows for a while and get some floating particles for next year. But it had no impact on him. And then David Bell came out and said he had the surgery today and he's going to be fine by spring training. So shouldn't see any fall off from Gray, any lingering effects from that. And then Suarez is the other big story from the Reds. Setting the record
for third baseman, for home run for third baseman. It blows my mind in the National League.
We talked about it last week, how Suarez has been so quiet with like no adulations for what he's done this year, and he ends up setting that record for third basemen. It's absolutely crazy to me.
I mean, it's crazy. I don't know really how to explain the whole thing because. Even as he sets it, it's like it's a footnote. It's like, right. Oh yeah, by the way, National League record for third baseman home runs. And if if you started before today or before he set this record, if somebody asked you who has the record, you start thinking about Mike Schmidt or even a former Red / Philly, like Scott Rowland.
Right,
maybe
right.
He had a lot of years there where he was hitting a lot of home runs. I mean. Chipper Jones, he had 40.
That's who I would have gone with.
Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of guys. I mean, Vinny Castilla when he was in Colorado. It's like, nope, Eugenio Suarez is now your record holder in the National League. What? That's
he
crazy.
Will likely hit 50. Suarez is at 49 right now. He's got 4 games left. He's probably going to hit 50.
It'll be the quietest 50 home runs.
I was going to say,
Major League history.
If we said at the beginning of the year, Sonny Gray is going to ball out and be an ace on the staff. Suarez is going to hit 50 and get 105 RBIs. You would think this team is hunting in the wild card.
I was just going to say, I was like, at the very least, I thought, well, they're in the wild card hunt all year, right?
Nope. And Joe brings up the same stat that he did last week and highlights the number 2 RBI guy on this team.
It's still Puig.
It's still Puig. Puig is still number 2 in RBIs on this team. He hasn't been on the team for months.
And he's 40 behind Suarez. Like, 40. The next closest guy is on another team and is 40 behind. That's insane.
Oh, it's so terrible what this team did to us this year.
It's
on
so
paper
bad that Aquino, who has only played for a couple of months,
is in the top.
Is in the top 5.
He's only 2 behind Votto in RBIs. Your $250 million man is only 2 ahead of a guy who only played
2 months.
Yeah.
Oh, God, when you break it down, it's real sad.
It's
real
super sad. This team, there is so much that this team could have accomplished if just everybody else did just a little bit more.
Yeah.
Just a little bit more. That's all you needed from this, and that is the most frustrating part about this whole season. The record in 1-run games, the fact that like these guys just didn't perform what they were supposed to, kills me.
Do you think that the lower and inconsistent stats just comes off of them not playing a straight lineup every day? Like they rotated people around and sat a lot and made them play and didn't, called them up, brought them down. Do you think that's why you have the vast majority of disparity in?
I mean, there's something to be said about that, but I feel like those guys, like Suarez and Votto, are the 2 that need to be. And honestly, I think this falls on Votto. If Votto had performed what Votto is supposed to do,
on Votto.
Yeah, if Votto performed where he was supposed to, and you have him coming up with 40 home runs and 100 RBIs, there's a difference right there.
Well,
you know,
because I was going to say, because you make the point of, well, if you said Sonny Gray was going to do this and Suarez was going to do that, you'd think, oh, they'll be in a pretty good spot. But then let me also tell you that, Joey Votto is only going to have 40-some RBIs, 55
right.
RBIs. Like then you're like, oh, no, wait. That probably means that they're screwed. Because if Joey Votto is underperforming to that level, then, yeah, they've got no chance. And that's exactly what happened. Like, you can't have it where your most expensive player on the roster just completely issues the bed.
I don't want to be one of those fans that's like, Votto's got to hit home runs. Votto's got to hit home runs. But Votto has to perform is what he has to do.
Votto just has to be Votto. His game has never really been home runs. He's a guy who hits for high average. Yes, he hits his fair share of home runs, but that's just a part of the game that comes because he's such a good hitter. But when if he's not hitting above 300 and knocking in over 100, then you're probably in some trouble.
Anybody on the team that hit over 300 this year? There's nobody in the lineup that hit over 300.
Yeesh.
Dude, that is unreal.
I know we're in a different time where batting average doesn't mean as much, but you always have one guy.
You gotta have somebody.
There's always
over
one
300.
guy who's even at 301 or whatever, like very lowest 300 you can get. But even if it's just a guy who doesn't hit for any power, yeah. I mean, it's just like you're looking at that and you're like, well, this is a recipe for the season that they had.
Right.
I mean, that's how you.
But how do you
here.
improve on this? Because at some point, it's like these guys are who they perform as. This isn't like this was a random thing. This was an entire season of work here.
Well,
it's not a small sampling size. This is the entire season, and this is where we're at.
The most troubling part is, this is what you've gotten from Votto now 2 years in a row. Like this decline.
Right.
It's not. This wasn't a one-off. Last year, people were like, well, he could bounce back. He didn't, and you're like, well, he's not getting any younger. So
right.
This is basically what you can expect. He's on the downside, but he's still making the most money. So I mean, I don't know what they can do to improve. I mean, outside of trades, and I don't know, what they've got asset-wise that anybody would want.
Not much. That's kind of where we're at.
So it just. It's like you're going into next year and you're looking at it like they're probably not going to spend money. So, the free agent game isn't going to be, they'll probably just make modest pickups, just, whatever pickups. And unless
You say
they
that,
make
but
a
this is also
blockbuster
the
trade.
team that made the all of the noise last offseason.
No, I know
So-
they did, but it was all predicated on trades. And so
Right,
this year
right.
you're looking at it in the standpoint of, well, what do they have to trade? Because they traded everything
Right,
they had
right. They don't
last
have-
year.
yeah.
So this year, what can you do really? Like, you're kind of hamstrung because you've got Votto tied in, you've got Suarez, the pitching staff is set. But how else can you make the lineup any better other than hoping guys just figure it out?
Hit the damn ball. Hit the friggin' ball.
That's it. I mean, you're literally just hoping for in-house improvement, and that's a tough sell.
A very tough sell. I want to talk a little UC football before we get out of here this week. Let's get into the Bearcats and that beautiful cheer. As Xavier
They could
guys, that
literally be
pains
saying
me
anything.
every time. Every time we play that. UC coming off the bye week, they are traveling to Huntington, West Virginia this week, playing Marshall. I believe they're a 2.5-point favorite on the road this week. This is a game I feel like UC should win. The only thing that I'm worried about is that they're looking ahead to UCF.
No,
That's
just
the
exact-
only.
that's the
this is a
absolute-
classic trap
right.
game right here, where
Well, maybe the fact that UCF lost kind of,
it does take some luster off of that game.
Right.
After
It's not.
UCF.
I mean, not saying that Cincinnati still won't be looking ahead because they're still a ranked opponent, and so it's still one of the best teams they'll play all year.
Well, and it's still the number one team in the conference. So
Right,
It's still a team that
exactly.
it's your conference opener. Like that's
Sure.
So you really have. Like, that's a
There's
big-
no lack of reasons that they will get up for this game, but I mean, it just trying to play devil's advocate. It's like, it takes just a little bit off because they're not coming in undefeated and this powerhouse that they've been recently.
I'm
so.
hoping that Fickle has used this bye week. Sorry, I got beer that I'm all hiccuping. I'm hoping that Fickle has used this bye week to focus everybody in on Marshall.
Sure.
Because you
Absolutely.
can only win the games that are in front of you. So you got to go in, you got to beat Marshall, and then set that up for this matchup for with UCF at night, at home, big stakes on Friday night, and get pumped for that game after you win this one.
Sure, and I think I feel like they will. I mean, nobody likes having a bye that early on their schedule, but it comes at a good point when you're looking at the way that's set up to where it's like, all right, you've got this whole week to focus on this
Right.
one opponent rather than having the game last week and then having to quickly transition. They've spent 2 weeks paying attention to just Marshall, and so I feel like that benefits them to not get ahead of themselves and go looking at UCF. So I feel like they'll handle their business in this one and keep the momentum that Fickle has kind of built up here in the last season and a half.
Marshall is a team that racks up a lot of yards. They've got 434 total yards per game this year.
Hasn't that always kind of been Marshall's MO? Just
Yep.
high-flying
and
offense?
they give up a lot.
Yeah, I was
too.
gonna say,
they
their
don't
defense
really
is
play
never
much. They go
existence.
Big 12 style defense, baby, where it's just like, you're gonna score 50, we're scoring 51. How about
Yeah,
that? So I feel like this sets up really well for UC. The number that's kind of scary though is Marshall is scoring 32 points per game, where UC is only averaging 19.7.
That's a disparity.
However, look at the level of
I was gonna say
who they've
the-
played.
the-
UC's
the
got
two teams
Ohio
that they've
State
played.
on that
Right.
on that schedule, where Marshall has not played anybody near Ohio State. They did play Boise State pretty tough. Lost
and
14-7,
imagine that they got held to 7 points in that game.
but they also held Boise State to 14.
So that's odd.
That's very odd.
That's weird.
That's
Weird for both sides, but
I think
I
I
like
I
UC
feel
in
like
this
UC
game.
wins this
Yeah.
one. Like I said, especially
it's
coming off
probably
the bye week.
we're looking at probably a 24-21 game, something like that, where like
So
UC's not going to blow.
They
out
don't
the
cover because it
doors.
wasn't 2.5. It's 3.5. where the
Okay,
line
yeah,
is now.
so
So
I-
UC doesn't cover, but they get the dub.
Yeah, but I think we're
I'm
looking
on board
at
with that.
mid-20s for both teams.
I can't wait for next week. We gotta get our boys at Scout Team because we got UC versus UCF coming up next
Right.
week. We got to get something going for that game, and it's actually kind of funny because I think FC Cincinnati plays Orlando on Sunday, so we can really get
So Friday it's UC UCF, and then Sunday.
I think it
it's
starts this coming Sunday.
Oh,
is
okay.
FC
So Sunday
versus
and then the following Friday.
and
Okay.
then the following Friday.
Well,
So
you have the tradition. I don't want to step on your toes of losing bets to them.
I will
for
do that.
Orlando.
I will
So
do
that's
that
all you.
as I
That's all
normally
you.
do.
But I
with the
mean, I'm
show.
down to do something for the football matchup because I feel more confident in that than I ever will in some FC.
I don't feel confident at all. Yeah, it is. It's the 29th against Orlando SC. So there you go. We've got Craft Brewed Sports versus Scout Team Radio week coming up here.
It's homecoming week for us.
We're calling you out, Scout Team Radio. Here we go.
Get some.
This has been a really fun show, man.
It's great.
We really broke down that Bengals game a little bit more than I thought we were going to.
They're getting this dub. I'm confident. They got this win this week.
I hope so, man, because I can't take another week watching an L. I can't take it.
Well, I certainly can't because I need them to win because I'm sick of throwing at this stupid board. I really am.
If you want to know what Scott's talking about and you haven't checked out our Wednesday night show, be sure to follow us on Facebook. Hit us up on Twitter at CraftBSports. We do weekly picks where the loser has to throw at a dartboard and there's punishments involved, and it's amazing. So be sure to check out that show. Follow us on Twitter at CraftBSports. You can follow Scott at ScottyK_Jr. Follow me at Mike Burlon. Follow Joe at JoeGoalie4. If you guys have any smoking hot Cincinnati takes, leave them on our drunk line, 440-37 drunk.
Hot Mets, if you will.
Oh, all right. I like that. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Cheers, everybody.
See ya.